Okay, I want to use these videos to talk about file handling, and file handling is referring to the reading and writing to text files, and we can talk a bit more later about where you might find that useful, but for now let's have a look at a text file. So this is using Notepad to view the contents of a TXT file, and that is kept very simple. So it's clear, and you've got a name and then a game score. So the comma creates the second column, if you like. Now, if you don't have access to this, you can very easily just open up a new Notepad file and write in some names. So if you write the name and then the score and then another name and their score, and if you save it as a .text file, so you could call it names or whatever, okay, and then you've got some test data to play around with. Okay, now we're not going to use that. I'm going to use the one that I've got prepared for us already. So how do we get Phony to, or any IDE, to actually read the data that is stored in this text file? Well, the first thing that you need to do is you need to save your program. So I've got a new Phony page open here, and you need to do File and Save As, and you need to save it in the same folder location that you've got your text file in. So here I've got File Explorer open, and this is the text file we were looking at before, and you can see I've got a .py file here where I have saved the Python program into the same folder that I've got the text file in. There's nothing in the page yet. We're about to do that. Right, okay, here we go. We've got an instruction here to open up the gamescores.txt text file. Okay, now this is in capitals because it is a constant. A constant is a variable where the value assigned to it does not change. So we've got the name of the variable, the constant, and then the open instruction, and then in speech marks the file that needs to be opened. Now this R could be an R for read, or it could be a W for write, or it could be an A for amend. So there are three possibles there. So we're going to focus on reading at the moment, and we'll talk about writing and amend later on. So all this does so far is it assigns the contents of this text file to that constant. Okay, so this text file has now been assigned to the my file constant. So what do we do now? So now we've got an instruction, and if I run that program, you can see it has printed the first line in the text file, so Tilly 57. Okay, and if we copy and paste that, it will actually do the next line. So you've now got two bits of data there. So what's going on here? Well, it's obviously the print instruction and then the constant, and then dot read line open bracket close bracket, and that's inside a pair of brackets like that. And we could continue to make it read the next line by doing that. So what do you think the output will be now? So you'll notice I've got a 3 inside that read line bracket. So if we run the program, well, in fact, let's pause the program and you write that command and see what the output is. Okay, so hopefully you got the same thing I did. It's outputting the 3 letters, the first 3 letters of the first read line. So if we copy and paste that and run it again, it has now moved on to the next 3 letters on the same read line. Okay, so hoping to get a sense. So it's not dropped down to the second line, it is just working its way along. And if we carry on, if we do it again, you'll see it is now outputting the first 3 letters, then the next 3 characters, and then it's moved on to the last couple. Now, realistically, you probably won't use this instruction very often, but it's starting to give you a sense of how you can open a file and then read and print data from. So what if I wanted to print the entire contents of the text file? Well, you might think that this would work, but if I run that program, I get this error here. So this is how you can print the entire contents of the text file. So if I run it, you can see here that it's output everything that is stored in the gamescores.txt file. Okay, let's take it a step further. So I've got a variable here called player1, and we are assigning a value from the myFile constant. Okay, now if I print, can you guess what the output is? Yes, it is outputting the first line of data in the GameScores text file. Now, what if we added, in fact, can you please add 3 separate players to variables, so player 1, player 2, player 3, and then print them all out? So hopefully you've got something a bit like this, where you've got a variable and then it assigns the next line in the text file, and then player 2 has had this assigned to it and player 3 has had this assigned to it. And then if we print those one after the other, we can see it does output those 3 users, so Tilly, Anna, Eleanor. Now, the problem we have is it's got a gap between each one, and that is because there is an invisible special character that is saved every time we press the enter key. It basically tells the computer that there is a new line being written, one underneath the other. So the invisible character, the special character, is called a carriage return. It's \n, and what that does is it makes the text file display one line underneath the other, but in its memory it is saved like that. So we need to be aware of that, because otherwise we get this problem where you get a gap between each line, and we can get rid of that by using .strip, and .strip will remove that carriage return. So here you can see I've added .strip to the first variable where it is assigned a value, but I haven't done it for player 2 or player 3, and when we print them out, player 1 has had the carriage return stripped out, so player 2 prints directly underneath player 1, but player 3, there is a gap because what's been saved into player 2 includes that carriage return. So what it's actually had saved in it is Anna 93 slash, as you can see in this illustration here. This is what's actually been saved into player 2. So you will use .strip quite a lot. So can you please pause and make your program output at least 3 names with no gap between each one. And this is what you should get. Okay, let's move on. So this is actually a very inefficient way to output or find data that's been stored in a text file, and there are much better ways to do it. And in fact, a lot of the sort of GCSE level questions you get are generally asking you to iterate through the text file. So this is the fairly low tech version of it, and actually, you know, X works, but X is not a very descriptive variable. It's always good to try and use descriptive variables. So but as you know, with for loops, it will iterate through, going through one line after another, and you can see the output here that it has actually output all of the data in this text file. So can you develop this so that it doesn't have the gaps here? Okay, do you remember that we used .strip before? So how can you make it so that it outputs all of the names, including Myra, but without the gap between each name? So if you pause the video now, have a go. Okay, so hopefully you experimented and came up with something a bit like this, or exactly like this. So all I've done is, instead of printing the line, and I've just added .strip open bracket close bracket after the variable that it iterates through each time. So now when we run it, you're starting to get some useful data. So these iterating through the entire contents of a text file is really useful, and you can see here that I've developed it so that it is searching for Zaphod, character out of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and it will go through each line in the game score text file. So one at a time on each loop, it will look at a different line, and then it will see if Zaphod has been stored in there, and if it is found in there, it will output this. Otherwise, it will output this. So if we run that, you can see that it's gone through each line and output this. Now, if we change it to somebody that hopefully is, unless I've spelt it wrong, in the text file, we should get a different output. So it looked at the first line and didn't find Freya.
So output not found. Second line, output not found. Third line, output not found. Fourth line, output not found. Fifth line, it found it. And sixth line, not found.
So for loops can iterate through these text files line by line using for variable in constant, and then it can find things. So can you develop this? So instead of it hard coding a name, you could have a variable with a user input for it to search for. So I've got a variable and user input, which will assign a value to that variable, and then we will use that to search each line to see if they're in the text file. So if I run this program and I search for Bob, we can see that Bob is not listed in any of the text file records. So if we search for a different name, such as Eleanor, we can see it went through each of the rows of data and it did find Eleanor. And this is really how we work with lists at GCSE Computer Science. So you will find that many of the questions ask you to iterate through the lists looking for something. So you need to get used to using for to iterate through the lists, and often there are different ways we're going to get to where you can, for each loop, assign values, one row of data from the list to variables and then search through them. Okay, so final bit of recap. So we've got a constant which has had the contents of gamescores.txt assigned to it, and then we've iterated through each line of the record stored in the text file, one at a time, and we can use .strip to strip out the carriage returns, which create the gaps, so there are no gaps in there because we've got .strip used. We will be looking at in the next videos things like using .strip to remove characters. We can use .replace to replace characters and add to the variable. We can use .split. It's used a lot in computer science. We can use .slice as well. So the next video will explore those command words commonly used with file handling.